What happens when you finally stop reaching out? When you stop checking in, stop giving endless chances? "I'll tell you what happens," she notices, and in that moment, the power shifts. But here's the key. Your silence isn't about manipulation, it's about self-respect. The Stoics believe that true power lies in controlling what you can, your actions, your emotions, your presence. You're not ghosting her out of spite. You're removing yourself because you refuse to be taken for granted. In this video, we'll break down why stepping back isn't just a strategy. It's a mindset. A mindset rooted in Stoicism, self-worth, and the undeniable truth that sometimes absence speaks louder than words. Let's get into it. Number 1. She thought you'd always be there. When someone assumes you'll never leave, they stop appreciating you. She got used to you always being available, always patient, always forgiving. But here's the truth. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius reminded us to never assume anything is forever. The same applies to relationships. If she stops seeing your value, step back and let reality teach her the lesson. Think about it. When something is always within reach, it loses its significance. That favorite song you once loved? If you hear it on repeat every day, it starts to feel like background noise. The same thing happens in relationships. If she never has to wonder whether you'll be there, if she's certain of your presence, no matter how she treats you, she won't stop to appreciate it. She won't see you as someone to cherish, just someone who's always there, like the air she breathes. But what happens when that air disappears? When silence replaces your presence? When she texts and gets no response? When she starts noticing the empty space you once filled? That's when she begins to feel the weight of her assumptions. That's when she realizes that nothing in life, not even you, is guaranteed. Stoicism teaches us the power of detachment, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." The moment you step back and remove yourself from a situation where you're being taken for granted, you allow reality to do the teaching. You don't have to argue, beg, or demand appreciation. The absence of your presence speaks louder than any words ever could. Imagine a man who always shows up, always gives, always forgives. At first, it seems admirable, but over time, the woman in his life stops seeing it as special. She sees it as expected. Now picture a man who values himself enough to know when to walk away. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't make a dramatic exit. He simply stops overextending, stops chasing, stops being the person she took for granted. And suddenly, she feels it. The emptiness, the loss, the realization that your presence wasn't just a given, it was a privilege. Number 2, your absence hits different. People only recognize the weight of something once it's gone. She might have ignored your messages before, brushed off your efforts, thought you'd always be an option. But the moment you disappear, the silence hits her harder than any words could. Seneca believed that loss is life's best teacher. Your absence forces her to sit with the reality of what she took for granted. When you were always there, responding, checking in, showing you cared, she had no reason to question your presence. It was comfortable, predictable, almost too easy. And when something feels guaranteed, it's human nature to undervalue it. But now she notices the space you used to fill. The notifications that used to pop up on her phone are gone. The warmth of your attention, the security of knowing you'd always be around, it's missing. And suddenly, she realizes what she overlooked. This is the price of taking you for granted. The price of assuming that no matter how she treated you, you'd always be waiting. She thought she had time, thought she could put in the bare minimum and still keep you close. But time has a way of humbling people when they least expect it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." Your silence isn't revenge, it's a shift, a change that forces her to reflect, to feel the loss, to question why she let someone like you slip away. You didn't need to argue, beg, or prove your worth. You simply removed yourself, and that absence speaks louder than any words ever could. At first, she may enjoy the freedom. She might tell herself she doesn't care. But give it time. One day, she'll reach for her phone instinctively, expecting a message from you, only to remember you're not there anymore. She'll hear a song that reminds her of you, scroll past an old photo, or drive by a place you once went together, and it will hit her. Not all at once, but in waves. That's the thing about losing something real. It doesn't hurt immediately. It creeps up in quiet moments, in unexpected places, in the loneliness she never thought she'd feel. Because deep down, she knew you were different. She knew you genuinely cared. And now she understands that genuine people don't stay where they are unappreciated. Epictetus taught that we should value what is within our control and let go of what isn't. You can't control how she sees you, but you can control how you respond. And by choosing silence, by stepping back, you're teaching the most powerful lesson of all. Your presence was never a guarantee. It was a gift. Maybe she'll come back, maybe she won't. But one thing is certain, she will feel the loss. And if she truly values you, she'll return different, because now she knows. When you take someone for granted, you risk losing them forever. What do you think? Have you ever experienced a situation where your absence spoke louder than your words? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, or just leave "My presence is a gift" to let me know you're with me on this. Now, let's move on to the next key point. Number 3. You're no longer an option. She was comfortable thinking you'd always be there. Now, suddenly, you're not. And that changes everything. Epictetus taught that attachment makes people careless. When she assumed you'd never leave, she treated you like an option. The moment you detach, you regain your power. And she realizes you were never an option. You were the prize. But here's the thing about human nature. We don't truly value something until it's gone. That's when reality hits. She thought your presence was guaranteed, like the air she breathes, so she didn't bother appreciating it. She assumed no matter how she treated you, you'd always be there, waiting, answering, chasing. But now, your silence speaks volumes. The absence of your energy, your attention, your presence. It creates a void, and that void forces her to confront a truth she ignored. You were never just another guy. You were her peace, her stability, the one who truly saw her. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we should never place our sense of worth in another's hands. The moment you stop seeking validation from her, the moment you stop needing her attention to feel valued, you become something she can no longer control. And paradoxically, that's when she starts feeling the loss. Because now, you're not reacting. You're not proving yourself. You're not available on demand. Think about a man who constantly sends messages, seeks reassurance, and begs for attention. He becomes predictable, easy, taken for granted. But a man who knows his worth, who walks away when his value isn't recognized, he's unforgettable. He lingers in her mind. She starts to wonder why you're so calm, why you're not chasing anymore. She questions her own choices. Doubt creeps in. And suddenly, the tables turn. Imagine a woman who used to get daily good morning texts from a man who adored her. At first, she appreciated them. Then, over time, she expected them. Eventually, she barely noticed them. But the moment those messages stop, the absence feels louder than the words ever did. She checks her phone, wondering, why hasn't he texted? That's the power of loss. That's the price of taking you for granted. You are no longer waiting in the background, hoping for her to see your worth. You are living your life, growing, moving forward. And in doing so, you force her to face the one thing she never thought she'd have to. A reality where you're no longer an option. And that's when she truly feels the loss. Number 4. She sees what she took for granted. All the effort, the patience, the care, you didn't give it freely. It was an investment. And now that you're gone, she realizes just how much she lost. That's the thing about people. They only recognize value when it's no longer within reach. When something is always there, always available, it starts to seem ordinary. But the moment it's gone, that's when the absence speaks louder than anything else. Life teaches through contrast. The warmth of your presence, the security you provided, the way you made her feel. These weren't just small gestures. They were the foundation of the connection she took for granted. And now, in your silence, in your absence, she feels the weight of what she overlooked. The comfort she once dismissed as routine is now a void that nothing else seems to fill. This is where Stoicism reminds you of a simple but powerful truth. Detachment isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to stay where you aren't truly valued. As Epictetus wisely put it, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. You've reclaimed your power by stepping back, no longer allowing her lack of appreciation to dictate your emotions. You've chosen self-respect over desperation, silence over chasing, and now she's left to face the consequences of her own neglect. It's not about revenge. It's not about playing games. It's about balance. When someone takes you for granted, it's because they believe your presence is guaranteed. But the moment you remove yourself, reality hits. She begins to replay the moments when you were there, when you showed up, when you cared. And she starts to wonder why she didn't appreciate it more. Imagine this. She scrolls through old messages, looking at the way you once prioritized her. She remembers the nights you listened when she needed to vent, the little things you did without being asked. And now, that energy is gone. It's not directed at her anymore. She feels the shift, and it stings. The mind has a way of romanticizing what it no longer has access to. She may not have noticed when your presence was constant, but your absence, it's making her see everything with painful clarity. And the hard truth? You're not there anymore to fix it. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone took you for granted, only to realize your worth too late? How did it change your perspective? Share your thoughts in the comments. Or, if this message resonates with you, simply comment, "I've moved on." Number 5. The fear of being replaced. Here's the real fear. She knows another woman will appreciate what she didn't. A man who can walk away confidently is a man in high demand. She once believed your presence was a given, something she never had to question or fight for. You were steady, reliable, always there when she wanted you. And because of that, she stopped appreciating you. She started assuming you would always be available, no matter how little she reciprocated. But now, reality is setting in. A Stoic man understands that attachment, when one-sided, is a weight that only drags him down. He doesn't beg for recognition or demand appreciation. He simply observes, sees the truth, and acts accordingly. When he realizes he's being taken for granted, he doesn't lash out or try to prove his worth. He just leaves the situation behind. And that's exactly what unsettles her. She thought she had time. She thought you would wait. But time doesn't wait for anyone, and neither do you. And now, she's left with the gnawing fear that someone else will see in you what she was too blind to appreciate. That another woman, one who truly values a strong and confident man, will be the one experiencing what she took for granted. Imagine her seeing you out, living your life, not just surviving without her, but thriving. She thought she had control over your attention, that she could push you away and pull you back whenever she wanted. But when you withdrew, when you stopped checking in, when your presence disappeared from her life, she felt it. Your absence wasn't just a void, it was a statement. Now, she's haunted by the possibilities. Is he thinking about me? Does he miss me? Is he with someone else? Every unanswered question becomes an anchor pulling at her mind, making her realize what she lost. A Stoic man doesn't seek revenge. He doesn't act out of spite. He doesn't need to. His self-respect does all the talking. By valuing himself enough to walk away from those who fail to appreciate him, he naturally commands the respect he was once denied. And in doing so, he leaves behind a lesson, a painful one. She may not have noticed your worth when you were there, but now she can't escape the fear of watching someone else appreciate you. The price of taking you for granted isn't just losing you. It's the torment of knowing she let a great man slip through her fingers. And the best part? You don't need to say a word. Silence is louder than any goodbye. Number 6. Regret kicks in. Regret is a slow burn. It creeps in when she least expects it. When she sees your name pop up in old messages. When she hears a song that reminds her of you. It's subtle at first, just a fleeting thought, a small tug at her emotions. But over time, it grows. It lingers in the silence where your presence used to be. It echoes in the late-night moments when she scrolls through old photos, wondering how something that once felt so certain slipped through her fingers. Seneca warned that regret is the price of not valuing what you have when you have it. And now, she's paying that price. She thought you'd always be there, that your patience and presence were constants in her life. She took you for granted, assuming you'd always text first, always reach out, always be available. But now, your silence is loud. It's not out of malice, not out of pettiness. It's simply the natural consequence of neglect. Absence has a way of reshaping perception. When you were around, she had the luxury of dismissing your worth, of thinking she had all the time in the world to figure things out. But now she's feeling the weight of your absence. It's in the moments she wants to share something with you, but realizes she no longer can. It's in the conversations where your name comes up, but you're no longer a part of her world. It's in the quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, you were more valuable than she ever admitted. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." Right now, her judgment is shifting. She used to see you as an option. Now she's realizing you were a priority she treated too casually. And the worst part? It's too late to change that. This is the price of taking you for granted, of assuming you'd always be there, of thinking your kindness, your time, your energy came without limits. But you are not infinite. You are not someone who waits forever. And by the time she realizes that, You've already moved forward. Now, it's her turn to sit with the silence. Now, it's her turn to feel the loss. If you've made it this far, you understand the power of silence. Absence changes everything. It shifts perspectives, reveals truths, and forces people to confront what they once overlooked. Have you ever seen someone realize too late what they had? Or have you been the one learning that lesson? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. Number 7. Your indifference changes everything. She reaches out, testing the waters, but she senses something's different. You're not bitter. You're not trying to make her feel bad. You just don't care the way you used to. And that unsettles her more than anything else. See, people rarely appreciate something until they feel its absence. When you were there, always available, always ready to listen, to fix, to chase, she got comfortable. She assumed you'd always be an option. And that's the mistake people make when they take someone for granted. They believe they have all the time in the world. But you've changed. Not in a petty, vengeful way, but in the way a man does when he finally sees his own value. A Stoic understands that attachment to another person's approval is a form of weakness. He doesn't control how others perceive him, only how he carries himself. So you've stepped back, not as a strategy, but because you've accepted the reality. She had her chance. And now, she gets to feel what life is like without you. Maybe she thought your presence was ordinary, something she could always come back to, something that would wait for her. But your silence proves otherwise. She starts to notice the difference. Your absence isn't just the lack of your words or attention. It's the absence of someone who genuinely cared, someone who would have given her the world if she had only treated you right. And now, that world is no longer hers to step into. Think about it. How often do we only recognize the value of something once it's gone? The warmth of a familiar voice, the comfort of knowing someone is thinking about us, the reassurance that no matter what, we are wanted. When that disappears, it creates a void that no one else can easily fill. And she feels it. She scrolls through old messages, wonders if she made a mistake, but her pride won't let her admit it. She waits for you to break, to reach out, to prove that you still care. But you don't. A man who knows his worth doesn't waste his energy trying to convince someone to see it. He doesn't beg to be chosen. He simply walks away, knowing that time will reveal the truth. And the truth is, once a woman realizes she took you for granted, she will feel the loss. Not because you punished her, not because you played games, but because you evolved beyond needing her validation. And that, my friend, is the moment everything shifts. Number 8. It's more than just missing you. She doesn't just miss you. She misses how life felt with you in it. The energy, the support, the way you made things easier. That's when it really sinks in. She had something rare, and she let it slip away. At first, she thought your presence was a given. She assumed you would always be there, always available, always willing to show up. It's human nature to grow comfortable with something that feels constant. But comfort can breed complacency. She mistook your consistency for something that didn't require effort, something she didn't need to cherish. Now, with your silence, the weight of her choices starts to press down on her. Marcus Aurelius reflected on impermanence. Everything in life is fleeting. She's now learning that lesson the hard way. Some things, once lost, can't be replaced. It's one thing to assume someone will always be around, and it's another to realize they won't. You see, people only truly appreciate what they have when they face the possibility of never having it again. It's easy to overlook a burning fire when it's always there to keep you warm. But when the fire dies out, when the cold sets in, that's when the regret starts creeping in. She took your warmth for granted, and now she feels the chill of your absence. And here's the beauty of your silence. It's not done out of pettiness or revenge. It's a quiet, stoic acknowledgement of reality. You're not begging to be noticed. You're not chasing to be valued. You're simply allowing her to experience the natural consequences of her own actions. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." She wasted time assuming you'd always be there, and now she's realizing how much she lost. The moments she brushed off, your patience, your reliability, the way you listened when no one else did, are now haunting her in your absence. She looks at her phone, expecting a message that won't come. She replays conversations in her head, wondering if she missed the warning signs. She scrolls through old pictures, feeling the sting of what once was. That's the price of taking someone for granted. The loss becomes real when she sees that the space you once filled isn't being replaced. No one else carries themselves with the same quiet strength. No one else makes her feel that safe, that supported, that deeply understood. And she realizes too late, you were not just another option. You were the difference between feeling whole and feeling lost. Let her feel that loss, not out of cruelty, but because it's the only way she'll understand the depth of what she let go. You don't need to prove your worth. Your absence already has. Number 9. She's at a crossroads. Now, she has a choice. Swallow her pride and try to fix things, or pretend she's fine and live with the what-ifs, the weight of that decision. It's not yours to carry, it's hers. And this is where most men slip up. They rush to fill the silence, to prove they're still there, still waiting, still hoping she'll recognize their worth. But a woman won't truly appreciate what she had if she never feels the emptiness left behind. A Stoic man doesn't wait for someone to choose him. He doesn't sit in the shadows, hoping she wakes up one day and realizes she took him for granted. He understands that attachment, when not reciprocated, becomes a self-imposed prison. And a man who values himself never locks himself inside a cage of waiting. Let her feel the loss. Let her sit in the quiet, where your presence used to be. The late-night conversations, the way you made her laugh, the security you provided. It's easy to overlook when it's always there. But when it's gone, that's when reality sinks in. Imagine a woman who slowly distanced herself, assuming you'd always reach out, always be the first to fix things. But now she looks at her phone, and there's no message from you, no calls, no reassurance. Days turn into weeks, and suddenly she realizes, this isn't a game. This isn't some temporary silence meant to make her miss you. This is your life moving forward without her. That's when it hits her. She starts questioning everything. Did she misjudge you? Did she mistake your patience for weakness? And more importantly, was she wrong to assume you'd always be waiting? That's the moment she begins to feel the weight of her own choices. And that weight? It's heavier than she ever expected. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In the same way, if someone takes you for granted, it's because you allowed it. You stayed too long in a place where you weren't valued. You gave too much without requiring anything in return. But now, you've taken that power back. You've chosen to be absent where you were once overly present. And that absence will speak louder than any words ever could. If she reaches out, Great. If not, that's her burden to carry, not yours. You did your part. You showed up, you gave, and you were present. Now, the silence will do the rest. Number 10. You keep moving forward. Whether she comes back or not, one thing is clear. You're no longer the man waiting in the background. You've stepped into your power. And nothing is more attractive than a man who knows his worth. For too long, she may have assumed you'd always be there, answering her calls, chasing her, proving your worth. She grew comfortable in the idea that you'd always wait, always make an effort, always be an option. But now, the absence of your presence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. This is the price of taking you for granted. And trust me, she feels the loss. A true Stoic doesn't need closure. He is the closure. He doesn't hold grudges, doesn't seek revenge. He simply becomes the best version of himself and lets life take care of the rest. It's not about bitterness or trying to prove a point. It's about self-respect. When someone fails to appreciate your presence, you give them the gift of your absence. And in that space, reality hits them. Imagine a man who once bent over backward to accommodate her, always showing up, always available. But one day, he stops. He focuses on himself, his growth, his ambitions, his peace. He redirects all the energy he once gave her into building the kind of life that he doesn't need anyone's approval for. At first, she might not notice. She might assume you'll be back, just like before. But days turn to weeks, and then it dawns on her. She lost a man who truly valued her, and she let him slip away. And here's where Stoicism makes all the difference. You don't pull away to play games. You don't go silent just to trigger a reaction. You do it because it's the natural response of a man who values himself. The same way a king doesn't beg to be recognized, a man of worth doesn't need to convince someone of his value. He simply exists in his own power, and those who fail to appreciate it, they're left to deal with their own regrets. In life, people don't realize the weight of their choices until the consequences settle in. She may have assumed you'd never walk away, that you'd always be there to pick up the pieces. But now, you're too busy moving forward to look back. And that is what makes her feel the loss. Not your anger, not your resentment. Just the undeniable reality that she had something rare. And now, it's gone. At the end of the day, people don't value what's always available. When you were constantly there, always reaching out, always making an effort, she had no reason to question your presence. She became comfortable, too comfortable, believing you would always be around, no matter how she treated you. But comfort can breed complacency, and complacency leads to taking things for granted. The moment you stepped back, reality hit her. She expected you to react, to chase, to prove your worth. But instead, you did the one thing she never saw coming. You became silent. And that silence wasn't just the absence of words. It was the absence of your energy, your attention, your care. Suddenly, what she once dismissed as routine became something she deeply missed. And this is where a Stoic man stands apart. You didn't pull away out of pettiness or revenge. You didn't play mind games. You simply valued yourself enough to stop pouring into someone who wasn't pouring back into you. This is the essence of self-respect, not needing validation from someone who failed to appreciate you when they had you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And that's exactly what you did. You didn't try to convince her of your worth. You didn't fight for recognition. You simply walked away with quiet confidence, allowing her to experience the natural consequence of her own actions. And trust me, she feels it. She may not admit it. She may try to suppress it, but deep down, she knows. She lost something real, and now she has to live with that realization. Whether she reaches out or not, whether she tries to mend things or chooses pride over regret, that's her battle to fight, not yours. A Stoic man doesn't wait for someone to realize his value. He doesn't linger in the shadows, hoping she wakes up one day with newfound appreciation. No, he moves forward. He evolves. He becomes better, stronger, more focused on himself and his own path. And in doing so, he unknowingly leaves behind a lesson far more powerful than words ever could. By the time she realizes what she lost, you won't be the same man anymore. You won't be waiting in the same place. You'll be too busy living the life you were meant to live. If this message resonated with you, take a second to hit that like button. It helps spread this message to others who need to hear it. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Have you ever experienced a situation where your silence spoke louder than your words? Did someone ever take you for granted, only to realize your value too late? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this powerful, don't stop here. Check out the recommended videos on the screen right now. Each one is packed with insights on self-respect, emotional detachment, and the power of silence. Because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing a man can have isn't money, looks, or charm. It's the ability to walk away when he is not valued. Stay strong, stay focused, and keep moving forward. I'll see you in the next one.